So if you apply the frameworks properly, and if you align your notes with the frameworks, and if you generate or compile sufficient amount of the examples and data, you can write any answers with multiple dimensions and with sufficient amount of the substantiation. If you read and prepare 28 points in exam, obviously you will be able to retain at least 20 to 22 points, which is what AR 1 to 5 achieve in their answers. Good evening, students. So today in our answer writing framework series, we will be discussing the answer writing framework for the internal security. So if you see, every year you will get around 4 questions from internal security. There will be 2 10-marker questions, question number 9 and 10, and 2 15-marker questions, question number 19 and 20. So total you will be getting 50 marks from the internal security. So framework for the internal security looks like this. So for the introductions, the majority of the questions, you have to use the data or report highlighting the India's vulnerability. For example, if you see the question on the narcotics, you can use this data. Since 2014, quantity of narcotics seized by the NCB till 2023 increased by 100% and cases registered increased by 152%. So this is the database report which highlights India's vulnerability to that particular internal security threat. The second one that you can use is the contextual introduction highlighting the recent news. For example, in 2021, a total of around 3,000 kg of narcotics produced in Afghanistan and brought to the Mundra port through India's Bandar Abbas port were seized at Gujarat Mundra port. So this is the contextual introduction which you can use for your introduction. And third is the quote-based introductions. So if the question is on the broader themes, suppose the question on India's overall internal security, or if the question is on the lines of assess the need for the internal security doctrine. So in such broader type of the questions, you can start with the quote as well. For example, if suppose the question is assess the need for the internal security doctrine. So in such questions, you can start with these kind of quotes. India's internal security is the dynamic and complex matrix which continually change or test the resilience of its democracy. So such code-based questions also you can use for your introduction. Or second, the internal security of India is a complex challenge where political, social and economic factors interplay, demanding a holistic and inclusive approach to peace and stability. So on the broader questions, you can use the quote-based introductions. Now, coming to the main body. So after the introduction, immediately after the introduction, if the question is on the border management or on the narcotics, in such kind of question, try to draw the map and make sure your map is detailed. For example, if you are drawing the map with respect to the narcotics, you have to ensure that you are showing both golden triangle and golden crescent, and you are mentioning the countries and you are also highlighting the route. Along with the golden crescent and golden triangle, there is one more route which is through the Indian Ocean region. So you can highlight the marine route as well. So you have to ensure your maps are very detailed. Similarly, with respect to the border management, if you are drawing a map with respect to India-Pakistan border or with respect to the India and China border, you have to ensure that your map is detailed, highlighting the differentiation or the different phases or the different areas of the borders. Okay. Then if the question is on either terrorism or the cyber attacks, in such questions, after the introduction, use a flowchart to highlight its different types. So the map or the flowchart that will set the proper context to your answer. Then coming to the main body, if you have been asked on a broader theme, what are the major internal security threats to India? In such broader themes, the major themes or the major threats, you can use the internal framework, where I stand for insurgency and terrorism, N stand for Naxalism, T for the technology and cyber security, E for the economic inequalities or the economic frauds or the vulnerabilities, R for the social aspect, the religious and communal violence, N for the narcotics, organized crime and drugs, A for the armed border conflicts, and L is your institutional issue, which highlights the issues in the law enforcement. Okay? So if the question is on the major threats, use the internal or the internal framework or the acronym. Okay. Secondly, if the question is on the causes or reasons or the major issues, so for the causes, you use the pastel approach. So where for political, you will be having the political instability. Suppose the question is with respect to the drugs. So the political instability in the Myanmar, increasing the India's vulnerability to the drugs. Then communalism and regionalism with respect to the terrorism, cross-border insurgencies through Nepal, through Bangladesh, through Pakistan with respect to the terrorism again. Then from economic, socio-economic disparities, again this is fueling the communalism and radicalism or radicalization. You can also use the resource deprivation theory. Then again unemployment and poverty, the same thing. Then resource allocation conflicts, this gives rise to the regionalism, which gives rise to the secessionism and insurgency. Then from social perspective, you have ethnic and religious tensions with respect to insurgency. Then you have caste-based discrimination or the demographic pressure with respect to the technological, the cybersecurity threats, lack of technological infrastructure, then emerging surveillance and privacy concerns. With respect to administrative, you have inefficient governance and bureaucracy, poor law enforcement and policing, corruption and lack of accountability. With respect to legal, you have the outdated legal framework, for example, your IT Act, the weak enforcement of the laws, for example, the poor conviction under the Prevention of Corruption Act or UAPA, then delayed judicial processes. Just give the data with respect to the total pending cases in the judiciary, which is close to about 5 CR. Then other aspects will involve the geographical aspect, that is the porous borders, difficult terrain and the hostile countries. Then historical, colonial legacy, long-standing insurgencies and historical grievances in the border areas. Okay? Then coming to the next aspect, after the causes, they will either ask you the way forward or the steps taken. So irrespective of the demand, if they simply ask you the way forward and not the steps taken, so in such cases, what you do? on the margins of your page, just put a box and add the steps taken or the schemes. So with respect to the schemes, simply follow the pie approach. So the political, that is the domestic schemes, and the global agreements. For example, with respect to cyber security, you have the Cyber Swachhata Kendras at domestic level. At international, you have the Budapest Convention. Then from the perspective of the institutional, the efforts taken for the capacity building of the law enforcement agencies, the training given, the coordination, for example, the MAC, Multi-Agency Coordination Center, then the legal measures, the different laws, for example, recent Data Protection Act, then from economic perspective, KYC, demonetization. These you can simply put a box at the corner of your page and you can add the steps taken. Last is the way forward. So with respect to the way forward, what you have to do, one, global or state level best practice. Remember, law and order is a state subject. So in the issues related to the Naxalism, Maoism, okay, with respect to the this insurgencies, okay, in all such cases, if you have any state level best practices, for example, the Greyhound model of the Andhra Pradesh, okay, you can use those in your way forward, okay, or the global measures or the global best practices. Then the legal measures, that is the strengthening of the laws, okay, or updating or amending of the laws. Then capacity building, this is your institutional aspect. Okay, the training, the modern equipments, okay, or training with respect to the cyber security. You can give the example of the Cyber Dome project of the Kerala. Then coordination between the agencies, majorly the intelligence agencies. This you can use as your way forward. And one common way forward that you can always use is the national security doctrine. Okay? So this way forward you can use in almost all of the questions. Then coming to the conclusions. Again, conclusions, try to link it with some objectives. For example, the Viksit Bharat SDG 16 or India's ambition of becoming a great power or need of new security strategy. So this is basically bit way forward type of the conclusion. That also you can give. Or you can use a quote. So suppose if your way forward is on the lines of the preventive measures that you need to take rather than the curative, okay, or the proactive measures that are needed. So you can use this quote. The time to repair the roof is when sun is shining. Thus, the proactive measures, okay, are needed in order to strengthen India's capacity, okay, with respect to cyber security or with respect to the terrorism, anything. You can use a quote, and then you can provide a brief way forward and conclude your answer. Okay, so this is your framework, overall broad framework with respect to the internal security. So whenever you are preparing the notes for any topic of the internal security, make sure to prepare your notes in this framework, apply this framework. So whatever specific points are there of that particular topic, you arrange them in this framework so that it will be easier for you to remember it, retain it, and there will be the better reflection of your notes into your answers. Okay? Now let's apply this framework in one of the questions. So this is the question from 2024 mains. So question number 20. Social media and encrypting messaging services pose a serious security challenge. What measures have been adopted at various levels to address the security implications of social media? Also suggest any other remedies to address the problem. So if you see the question, the core theme of the question is the social media and the encrypting messaging services and its, so first demand or demand 1 is the security challenges posed by the social media and the encrypting messaging services. Second, your directive is the what measures. So the measures have been adopted. So measures taken is your second demand. And at various levels they have said. So when they say at various levels, so the different levels will automatically become your subheadings. So at government level, at the tech companies level, and at the social level. So because of this word, your subheadings will become different levels. Then the third, also suggest any other remedies. That is the way forward, which is your demand 3. Okay? So it is a 15 marker question, and in 15 marker question generally you have the 3 demands. That means you have to address each demand in 1 page. So here if you see the introduction, so in this particular question, the most relevant introduction would be either a data-based or a contextual, where you can highlight the recent vulnerability with or the recent news with respect to the use of encrypted messaging services or the social media which has posed the security challenges, or you can use the data. Now your first heading will be the security challenges. That is it is about the threats posed, right? The third, the measures adopted. And next, way forward. Now if you apply the framework that we have discussed, for example, the first demand is the security challenges, second, measures taken, and third, way forward. So now coming to our framework, so these are, what are these? So the threats, so major threats posed, you can use the internal framework. So how the terrorists use the encrypted messaging used by the Naxalites, used with respect to the cyber frauds, then how it leads to the economic frauds, how the encrypted messaging or the social media lead to the religious and communal violence and used by the organized crime for the drug trafficking and narcotics, then armed border, not this point won't come, border conflicts, okay? But law enforcement, so how it creates a challenge for the law enforcement with respect to the privacy, okay? That is the first. Second, they have asked for the steps taken. So steps taken, the political or the policy level, institutional, economic, and with respect to the way forward, global best practice, legal measures, capacity building and coordination. Then if you see, your ideal answer will look like this. So if the introduction, if you see the introduction, we have given the contextual introduction. So the recent arrest of Telegram CEO highlights the growing concern about the potential misuse of the platforms using end-to-end encryption for illegal activities. But we haven't simply given the context, along with it we have added the data as well. As per Verizon data breach report, more than 30% of the data breaches involve social media. So this is your data plus context-based introduction. Then social media plus encrypted messaging leading to the security challenges. Again, if you see the same framework we have applied, terrorist for radicalization, use of Telegram by the ISIS for the recruitment, coordination use of encrypted messaging like Signal and WhatsApp for cross-border communication by the terrorists. With respect to the national security, you have the disinformation campaigns, example fake news, then affecting elections, example Cambridge Analytica scandal, then technology misuse, use of darknet for the drug trade, then economic impact, example 2020 Twitter hack to promote the Bitcoin scam, then phishing scams via Facebook and WhatsApp. So these are the examples of the economic. Then with respect to the law enforcement or they face the jurisdictional and the privacy issue. Example, the Apple refusing the backdoor access to FBI in 2015 terrorist attack. Then Facebook or the Meta challenging the traceability requirement in India's IT rules. So basically Meta has challenged the traceability provision in India's IT rules in the Delhi High Court. So that highlights the jurisdictional and the privacy issue. So if you see in one page, you have followed the framework and you have covered total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, no. So on the first page, you have covered about two. This is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages. So if you see on one page itself, you have covered 9 dimensions. Then on the second, measures adopted at the various levels. So as they have asked at the various levels, your subheading will becomes levels. So at government level, the measures that they have adopted, intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code, that is the legal measures that they have adopted. So mandate unlawful content removal and message tracing. Then governance fact checking unit in the PIB to verify claims about the government policies and provide the accurate information. Then specialized units, the institutional aspect like Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center, I4C, to tackle misuse of the social media, global collaboration through the Budapest Convention to facilitate the cross-border cooperation between the agencies or the law enforcement agencies, then legal Digital Personal Data Protection Act, holding platforms accountable for the data breaches. So this is at the government level. You have added 5 points. Then at platform level, so platform specific measures, so content moderation algorithms. So content moderation algorithms based on the AI used by the Facebook, Twitter to detect and remove the harmful content. Secondly, collaboration with the authorities by banning accounts linked to the terrorist organizations. Third, the community guidelines on hate speech and privacy. Fourth, transparency report by the Twitter highlighting the total data with respect to the accounts removed, with respect to the total demands made by the government, and with respect to the total content takedown by the platform. Okay. Then third level is the user level. So basically level is nothing but a stakeholder. So stakeholders involved are government, the administration or the law enforcement. The third is the platform companies like the Twitter, WhatsApp, and fourth are the users, that is citizens. So awareness campaigns, example, We Wonder Woman to promote safe and responsible use of social media. Then privacy awareness through two-factor authentication. Now if you go into the detail, you will find out that the majority of the points. You have come across these points in your day-to-day life. For example, if you see the content moderation algorithms to detect and remove the harmful content. So if you see, if you have ever visited or ever used the Twitter, so on the fake news, after that you will find that message by the Twitter, this is a fake news. Same thing is with WhatsApp. Okay, so that is the content moderation. Second, community guidelines on the speech and privacy. So before entering or before logging in on any of the apps, you will have that list of the guidelines, which if you breach, there can be the legal consequences against you. Okay. Then two-factor authentication also. All of you, those who use the WhatsApp, okay, there is an option of two-factor authentication. Then the last part is the other remedies or the way forward. So with respect to the way forward, at global level, global cybersecurity cooperation on data sharing and cyber threat intelligence. For example, the 5 Eyes Alliance. Second, balancing privacy and security. Example, implementing backdoors with sufficient safeguards. Okay, this safeguard will be homomorphic inscription. So with homomorphic inscription, you can secure the privacy of the users, and on the same lines, or on the other hand, you can also give the sufficient measures, or you can implement the sufficient measures to give the sufficient amount of the data or access to the law enforcement agencies in order to protect the internal security or the overall national security. So this is homomorphic inscription, and as that is our keyword, we have boxed it. Then at institutional level, improved coordination between the tech companies and the law enforcement agencies like CERT-In. Then mandatory security audits to ensure legal compliance by the tech companies. Then mandatory KYC identity verification to prevent anonymous spread of the misinformation, hate speech and online harassment. Improved cyber security framework, example, Cyber Surakshit Kendra. Then strict regulation on lines of the EU's Digital Service Act. So basically, this is your global best practice. Okay. Last, accountability and transparency by imposing the fines and penalties on social media platforms for non-compliance with the laws or the regulations. Along with it, one of the global best practice, you simply put it into the box. Okay, you can use it into the point as well, but it will enhance the visibility of it and it will act as your brownie point. So the important case study or the global best practice is UK's Ofcom. So it is a regulator and the competition authority for the communication industry in the UK. And then coming to the conclusion, we have used the same. A well-defined national social media policy and SOCMENT model is needed for Cyber Surakshit Bharat. So this was Cyber Surakshit Bharat initiative was launched by government in order to ensure the security or the cyber security of the citizens. So Cyber Surakshit. Okay. So if you apply the frameworks properly and if you align your notes with the frameworks and if you generate or compile sufficient amount of the examples and data, okay, you can write any answers with multiple dimensions and with sufficient amount of the substantiation. So remember, examples and data make your point specific. Without data and substantiation, your points will become generic. Okay, so in this answer, if you see, we have covered 8 points here. we have covered 5 points under government level. Then at platform level, we have covered 4 points. So 5, 4, 9, and at user level 2. So 11 points on the second page. I think 9 points on the first page, 20, and 8 points at the last page. So we have covered around 27 to 28 points in your 15 marker question. Okay, this is a perfect answer. I'm not expecting you to write the perfect answer for all the 20 questions. But if you read and prepare 28 points in exam, obviously you will be able to retain at least 20 to 22 points. Okay, which is what AR 1 to 5 achieve in their answers. Okay.